Hi guys, how are you? So nice to connect to you. Welcome to this video and welcome to my channel. My name is Laura. This is Pleiadian Healer from PleiadianHealer.com. And today we're finally going to do this video that I've been wanting to do for the past few weeks already. We're going to go through disclosures that are basically giving to us in certain types of movies. Inception is one of those, and two of the Matrix movies as well. So I wrote some notes down and I want to share the screenshots of the actual movies for people who may or may not know what that movie looks like. So let's just start with Inception. Okay, here we go. I don't know if you can see it, but Leonardo DiCaprio is the main key player in this one. And you have a few other ones that you probably know when you watch this movie. So Inception is a movie that came out in 2010. And then I also want to say, let's just go through the others. Matrix Reloaded, I think, was 2003. And Matrix Revolutions was that same year. Remember when we had the original Matrix movie? I think that was around 2000 or 2001 or 1999. It depends on which country you were in, but somewhere around that time frame. So these were the two movies that came out right after those. But let's just go back to Inception. So recently I was on a very long plane ride to Germany back and forth, and I got to see Inception on one flight and these other two movies on the flights back. And I actually managed to take a few notes because I was so drawn to certain messages that came through when I was watching these movies. And I really do think they're giving us a whole bunch of disclosure. So by they, I mean, AI controllers, the Matrix handlers, are just like the people who are in control, who are trying to put us under this spell from day one, right? Or even before we incarnate here, before we're being recycled back into this trap, we're being put under a continuous spell. For some, it's easier to see it that way and break out of it. And I do think a lot of people who are following this channel at this point kind of see it the same way. Something's off. We didn't volunteer to come here. And continuously, every single human being or everyone who kind of is walking around on this earth realm right now, we're being put under these spells. And TV shows, films, movies are a huge part of that. So I personally got rid of my TV back in 2010. The moment I moved to New York City, I have not owned a single TV in my life. I did have a small TV when I was a student and everything before that. And of course, when I grew up with my parents and everything, we all had TVs. But consciously, as a young adult and from a young age on, I just decided I did not want to have a TV because I kind of felt intuitively it was very toxic. And I was also feeling I was just wasting my time, especially being in a city like New York, where it almost felt like the outside is more interesting than TV shows. So what I used to do was just kind of watch random series or shows on my laptop back then, but I wasn't really one of those people who did it a lot, like other people around me. So I missed a whole lot of good things. Some people were talking about The Handmaid's Tale and all of those series that are coming out. If you have any suggestions of shows, put them below. There were a few ones. I think those shows were around in like the early 2000s. Like actually the one TV show Lost, where they get stranded on an island and everything. I feel there's a whole bunch of disclosure in that too. I was kind of watching it as a young adult, but never really got fully into it. There are other ones that have disclosures on ETs and aliens and everything too. So if you just want to like put it below, you can definitely, and maybe we can dissect through those and other ones. I already had one video on, what was it? We sleep, they're alive, they live, we sleep, or something like that. I'll just link it below or put it like in a timestamp right now. But that was back from the 70s or 80s, where the guy's putting on his glasses and he sees a whole new world. So they've been putting this disclosure out for a long time. Someone commented below that review video, and he or she was saying how it doesn't even matter if you were around in the 80s and 70s, just the fact that you kind of come across this thing now again. Like I came across that movie recently about a year ago. You're going to get the disclosure no matter what. So we can't really hold it against the people who were around back in the 70s and 80s and didn't really see the movie as disclosure as you would now. And I feel it's similar to the Matrix movies and also the Inception movie. back to the movie Inception. So this was around the year 2010, as far as I looked it up. Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the main actors in it. And I'm going to just continue with the notes that I wrote down. If you don't know the synopsis yet, maybe look it up beforehand. Basically, with Inception, it's all about hijacking the dream state. And they want to do that. This is a group of people who basically has the task by a rich person who's also somewhere in the picture in the background. I think it's hard to see with this one. And so this rich person kind of wants the hijack of, I don't know if it's pharma industry or some industry, like there's another person that's his rival and they want to hijack the dreams of that person and kind of just abuse them for their own. So I don't want to give away too much of the synopsis, but something like that, you know. And Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the main people who can do that. And then he hires an architect. The architect is the only woman really in this movie. There's another one, like a deceased wife and all of that too, but she's like the only woman in this team, which I found very interesting too. And so all of these people were working together with him in this Inception movie. So in Inception, a few things that they were saying was, in the dream state, the defenses of consciousness are lowered and they make you more susceptible to extraction. And I think that's something that this person here on the right said. He's a famous American actor too. I always forget his name. I don't know if his name is like something with J. I forgot his name. He's in 500 Days of Summer, if I'm not mistaken. So extraction makes you more susceptible to extraction. Thoughts are vulnerable to theft. It's basically a dream in a dream, and there are devices to measure the dream state. So I found all of this very interesting. I'm not sure if this is by like word by word what they said, but I kind of just wrote these notes down. Basically, you know, when I'm always talking about psychic attacks coming through in dreams, you know, especially I was talking about that recently after certain New Age review videos, but I'm also talking about how they're targeting certain family members in my dream state and how I get messages with that, and how they also target a lot of our lives possibly in the dream state. I feel it very strongly because, you know, that's why this entire movie kind of resonated with me, because I really do remember almost every single dream. I don't write them down every night, but I do have a dream journal and I write them down frequently, especially if it's a dream where I think it would be interesting to share it. So the defenses of consciousness are lowered, and that's also why, you know, people are talking about astral projection, astral traveling during the dream state, or people are having dreams about being abducted, ending up in a lab setting. I find a lot of that. I even know people who are too terrified to go to sleep and to even dream because they intuitively know they're going to be abducted anyhow in their dream state. You know, I was working with this one guy who was always constantly shoved into this X-ray type of machine when he was asleep. Like I kind of saw that with a vision when I was reading on him. This is back in 2017 or 2018, even before I knew about these concepts, you know, because back then I was still a bit on the edge of, oh yes, you know, the New Age thing of, oh yes, of course we have to invite aliens and all that. But even then I was a bit distrustful because I had seen these things with this one person, for example, where they were just randomly doing these experiments on him in his dream state. And he legit would never want to go to bed. You know, he would maybe sleep 2 hours a night, which I don't think personally it's very healthy in my opinion. But he was just so terrified, and intuitively he probably knew that they were trying to get to him in his dream state somehow. And that's probably because the defenses of the consciousness are lowered, and it makes you more susceptible to the so-called extraction. In the movie, extraction means extracting your thoughts. But I want to go as far as saying even extracting parts of your soul somehow. And when I do the soul retrievals and the soul recalls, that comes through very clearly too. So thoughts are vulnerable to theft, because in this specific movie, it was all about stealing the thoughts and modifying the thoughts of the rival. But I do feel thoughts are vulnerable to theft. I also feel, you know, parts of our essences of our soul is vulnerable to theft. And so they're talking about a dream and a dream, and that's kind of what it feels like, right? Are we like in the simulation, which also the Matrix movies are a lot about that? Are we really walking in this 3D reality? Like, I walk from one room to another. It feels different than it did 5 minutes ago. It's because am I in a different parallel reality? Just all of those things. So in the movie, they're saying devices to measure the dream state. This one actor was saying, true inspiration is impossible to fake. And you have to go deep enough to plant an idea. So I put a question mark behind, is true inspiration really impossible to fake? Because that kind of implies that true creativity, the true arts, like painting, music, writing music, the photography, whatever you understand under art, art can be anything at this point, as we know. Like you can just throw something up in the air and that's art. But it doesn't mean that the true arts, they're kind of like all of us kind of hijacked from the souls, and then maybe soulless beings sell them as their own. Because if you look at the entire painting industry and gallery industry, it's very, very controlled by the elite. I know so many talented painters here in New York myself who were never able to make that breakthrough, or were never able really to sell a book or whatever, and who were just so talented. I always wondered why were they just never really able to be discovered, even though they had agents, they had all these things. So I put a question mark behind, is true inspiration really impossible to fake? It would explain somehow why this entire art industry is hijacked too, because they don't want people to be creative after all. They want everyone kind of being uploaded in this AI simulation, if we aren't already, because we're already somewhere in a simulation. And so back to the entire plot, you have to go deep enough to plant an idea. It's almost creepy because you wake up and you have an inspiration or an idea in regards to something, and you wonder, is that really mine? Or is that a thought process that was planted into me by the AI that kind of hijacked me in my dream, right? So another thing, and I think this was actually Leonardo DiCaprio who said it, he said, that you never really remember the beginning of a dream. And that is actually very true, because you always kind of wake up and you're in the middle. You don't wake up, but you kind of, from the moment you start remembering your dream, you're already in the middle of that dream, or almost at the end of that dream. That's kind of how I see it too. So it's interesting they actually point this out in this movie. In the dream, the mind functions more quickly and time seems more slow. And I want to point out, when you're under the influence of substances like psychedelics, possibly marijuana and other things, this also happens. Okay, anyone who's experienced any form of trip, no matter what substance you took before, you can probably confirm this, that somehow the time drags and you think hours have passed, whereas it's only been 5 minutes, right? And that's why when some people have a really, really bad trip on those substances, which I know a lot of stories about that too, it almost feels like they're stuck in this endless loop of time and they can't get out of it. And that's why when they finally get off of that substance, usually those trips, I don't know if you just smoke something, but usually when you take the full-on substance, it can take up to 8 hours, right? And usually it's like a nightmare of a trip, and people are so traumatized after if it was a really bad trip. But for others, other trips may be okay and it wasn't that bad, but just like another idea I had. So 5 minutes in the real world is 1 hour in a dream. And I remember that too. Every time I try to recall a dream, it almost feels, when I was talking about when I was psychically attacked in a dream, I was falling down this auditorium and everything, trying to not break my legs and all of that. It really felt like that entire plot was almost days, or it took like at least 5 hours, but it must have only been 5 or 15 minutes in a dream. So talk to the subconscious. So when these people are trying to hijack the subconscious in a dream, they want to talk to the subconscious, but then a bank vault filled with something appears and the mind wants to protect that. So whenever they're in the movie Inception, when they want to hijack something, the natural defense of the person is having a bank vault appear so that they can't get through, and then they kind of have to figure out a way how to get through. You can't control the subconscious. And then you saw this scene where people were attacking the foreign creator, like the architect who had built this reality, and also Leonardo DiCaprio, and the intruder changing things in his dream. So they were in this one person's dream they wanted to hijack. And all of a sudden, Leo and his architect girl, they're walking down the street, and they're changing something, like they're changing a street lamp, or they're making the street go up, like it shows here in the background, you know, all these funky stuff. And all these random people, like bystanders on the street, are starting to look at them and even attack them, you know, really almost like trying to stab them or whatever. And I know I haven't yet aired the Germany video, but I think I had a little line in my Germany video where I was walking down the street in Heidelberg and I felt the same. Everyone was looking at me like I was, you know, this is a city I used to live in for years because I studied in this city. And I don't think I look like an alien or so foreign, you know, like I know I've been gone for a little bit, but I don't think I look so out of the unusual. People were staring at me and they were trying to figure out what's wrong with me because they could kind of feel I don't fit into their world. And I had just watched the movie Inception right before that, like a few days before that. And I literally felt like this was a deja vu to that moment where in the movie they were being attacked because they were in the subconscious mind of someone else. And I was like, what's going on here? And am I somehow in the AI world of someone else? Am I intruding somehow and they're trying to attack me? It was legit, like all these people, I could even tell that they were talking like gossip behind my back. You know, a lot of in Germany is really about that and their culture and everything. I hate to say it. And it just felt so weird and so off. And I felt like a complete stranger in my own country, basically. It was very strange, but I'll cover that in the next video, maybe. So it just not just happens in a dream, it can also happen in real life. And I noticed that when I was walking along this certain city where I don't live anymore. You can't wake up from the induced dream unless you die in a dream. Okay, so I remember dreams where I literally was, you know, jumping off bridges and everything. And before I basically died in my dream, I woke up. So that kind of was what it reminded me of. To perform Inception, you need imagination, a dream within a dream. So then they had like 3 dreams stacked up on each other, creating realities in a dream. The dream becomes the reality. So people getting lost in the dream and never really being able to wake up, which all of that really reminds me of what we're currently in, right? Are we really in this current reality? The movie's just out there, honestly. Like if you really look at it and interpret it with a very awakened mindset, and you see all the codes that they're using, they're actually giving you a whole lot. Also having a totem to keep track of reality, which I found interesting too. So the totem could be like a small stone or a small, they had like a small thing, like just like a small item that you can keep in your pocket or something like that. The subconscious is motivated by emotion. So the stronger that emotion is, you know, positive emotion trumps negative emotion. So basically, when you're in love, when you're happy, all of that trumps, you know, more like a hateful emotion or a sad emotion. The brain functions 20 times more in a dream. So brain function is 20 times more increased in a dream. Oh yeah, also the architect's name, who was this girl you see, is Ariadne. Ariadne is the person in the Greek mythology who got lost in the labyrinth. So all these names, they're no coincidence that they're being chosen in the movie. And then the last note that I had in regards to this was militarizing the mind and dreams as a protection. And they also said an idea is like a virus. And this one was filmed in 2010, and in 2020 and on, what are we dealing with, right? We're dealing with an actual virus. Well, we don't want to really put much on that in this video, but you know, that's basically what they're saying it is. So it makes you wonder, maybe that thing came from an idea somehow, not just a potential lab or whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of what I had to do with Inception. We're gonna move on with The Matrix Reloaded. All right, I had to pause that in between. So we have The Matrix Reloaded right here. And basically, this came out in 2003. It's kind of what I put next to it. And the next one would be, hold on, The Matrix Revolutions, which I think they both came out in the same year, if I'm not mistaken. It was kind of like a sequence or whatever. So one came out in the beginning and the other in like November. But The Matrix Reloaded is based on the first Matrix movie, which I think at this point we've all seen. If not, definitely go watch it. And I shortly reviewed it back in 2020, but I think it might need another review somehow. So just some keywords that I wrote down, and this is just random stuff, you know, people just mentioning it throughout the movie. So all the actors, I'm not going to summarize the plot because it's just too much, but you guys can always look it up if you don't know the movie yet. I think most people do. Someone was saying we need machines and they need us. So they're already giving you a whole bunch of disclosure with the entire machine, that there are machines in our reality. We're kind of controlled by them, right? Also, there were people on the ship not understanding how machines work, but them still being around. So why were the machines around when we don't really know what they're there for, why they work? They're kind of like pushing these machines into our reality. It reminded me a little bit of, you know, us being replaced by these machines, like all our jobs being replaced by them, and we're kind of aware of it, but not really. The same with like the self-driving cars that they want to pull off, right? So it all follows a certain agenda. The ship name was Zion. So similar to the other movie where the female architect name was Ariadne, like Zion, you know, these are all God's names. There's a reason for it. You know, what does Zion really mean? We have like Zion National Park here in the US. So yeah, there's all a meaning behind it. And the ship name Zion was basically the home to these main characters, but also other people. And then you had Neo and the girl. So Neo basically means new, right? It's a Greek word. It's an old Greek word. And Neo and the girl. So it's always about Jesus and the Savior. And I think someone commented when I reviewed this video back, the first movie back in 2019 or 2020. And I think we did a YouTube live and everything on it. There was already a person who was basically commenting and saying, oh, I didn't really like the Matrix movies because they were implying that it was all about Jesus and the Savior. And now after seeing the other two ones, I kind of agree with it, because the first movie, it wasn't even that predominant. But in basically these two movies that followed just a few years later, it kind of was, because it was all about who's the savior now. You know, the Oracle always saying, oh, Neo's the savior and all of those things. So yeah, the first movie, it wasn't as telltale, but the next two, it definitely was. So I understand where that person was coming from. The emphasis in the second movie of The Matrix Reloaded was always on being human. And a mysterious oracle always predicting stuff. You know, it's almost like this Oracle of Delphi is what it reminded me of, always predicting, but we're never really able to do that ourselves, which I do think a lot of us are able to do ourselves in our own ways, right? That's also what I want to teach with the courses that I have. But it's always about, oh, I come from the psychic line of 3 generations back, and that's why I know more than you, like all of that, what other psychics push on us, and we believe it. Aberkanesa was a small boat. So I'm sure there's a meaning behind the Aberkanesa word too. So that was the small boat or ship that they were using for attack as well. It's always about the war and fighting a war. And I personally do feel we're fighting an energetic battle in war in the astral when we kind of go to sleep, for sure. Or even like in our waking state somehow. Sometimes we feel so drained, right? Some people say it's the solar storms and flashes. Yeah, it could be a part of that too. I mean, that's all AI technology they're pushing onto us, same with the Schumann resonance. But I really kind of feel the reason we feel so exhausted is because we're not really in full control of all our soul pieces. And in these alternative realities, we are playing out different wars, let's put it that way. And we're being used in these different energetic battles. It was also all about the shape-shifting agents, which, talking about shape-shifting, you know, you're talking about the reptilian agenda and certain parts of the elite being reptilian. That's kind of what it reminded me of. Golden soul pieces, or the golden soul with the Asian fighter. So there was a scene where there was an Asian fighter and he had a golden soul or something. Oh, there was also, in this particular movie, it was all about the key maker, and he knew the key out. And I do think certain people, like possibly certain people in the medieval age, like certain kings, had access to that key out of the matrix, and possibly things like the Vatican or whatever they have something very, oh no, there goes my microphone. Every time you mention the Vatican, they don't like it. There's always something happening. All right, sorry about that, guys. Hope that wasn't too bad. I mean, you think there's so much anger coming through from these new agers that are being reviewed. Just try to review like the Catholic religion and the Vatican is all I have to say. Like I already noticed huge psychic attacks back in 2021 from that one. So there's certain areas, possibly the ones that I mentioned, that it may or may not have a key out. And the key maker is just a symbol of that. You know, if we really come from the space of them giving us disclosure in these movies, especially a movie that's called The Matrix, that could be one. There's also a white hallway opening up to a past life or a reality after another. When I sometimes do these shamanic journeys, when I do the shamanic soul retrieving, there's a lot of hallways that come through, and some actually do look like the one in the movie. So I know it's not just in my imagination. They're really pushing those hallways somehow. And then you just open up random doors and have access to certain aspects of that person. There was an Asian guy being a programmer, and then you didn't come here to make the choice. You already made it. You are here to understand why you've made it, why you've made the choice, is what the Oracle said at one point. There's a program is hacking a program. So when we see ghosts, werewolves, etc., it's just another program somehow. You know, honestly, if you guys haven't seen the movie, I would just say see the movie, and it makes more sense when I do these notes. But there's basically this thing, like a person who wrote the program, The Matrix, was basically saying this, I believe. So when we see ghosts, werewolves, all of that, I do think to a certain extent they do exist, but it's basically a program being hacked by another program. So we're basically just being misled by all these programs. And program being deleted. So around minute 48 of this movie, there's some really good stuff in it too. I wasn't able to write all of it down. And then we came to this point where there was this delusional French man who was basically, he had his wife, they weren't happy in a marriage, all of that, because he was cheating on her or whatever. So he was basically giving this huge party, he was in power. And he was saying, what do all men in power want? More power, or something like that. Or maybe that's his wife that said it. Which I also think, you know, either in this movie or the one after that, the cinematography was very, very good. And when I was rewatching it 20 years later, which is basically now, I really felt nothing had really changed. You know, there was like this dance party that they did the videography on. And I was like, this could literally be a random party in an establishment here in Brooklyn or in New York. You know, that's how people would still partially dress, especially the Burning Man scene. And it hasn't really changed that much with the funkiness, you know, people walking around half naked and everything. So yeah, I was very taken aback by how much of a deja vu I saw to it in real life still, and how it really hasn't changed that much. Let's put it that way. Okay, so then the agent was saying, part of you imprinted onto me. He was saying that to Keanu Reeves or to Neo. Not sure how it happened. There was a glitch in the system, and because of you, I am unplugged. So that was Agent Smith. And then the bodies were turning into black goo when the agent touches them. So they're trying to take the purpose and the heart from people, is what I interpreted into it. And if you're really looking at, you know, especially the insight I got after the first and second jibbity jabbity Jew that people took, if you're really looking at it from today's perspective, black goo is a huge one that keeps coming up, right? So also they're creating a lot of agent clones. It's almost like all these clone bodies we see in our reality. Choice is an illusion created by those with power and those without, is what the French guy said. That was around minute 66. That's another thing. Movies used to be way shorter than they are now, and I kind of prefer them shorter. Soon the why and the reason are gone. It's all about the feeling. So it's cause and effect. And then you had shape-shifting zombies. They looked white. Oh, this is another good one. The Keymaker was basically leading to a red chair that had two lions right next to it. So you're talking about the entire lions and Lionsgate portal thing. When I was looking at all these museums and everything in Germany, lions always came up from the medieval ages. And every tour guide said the same BS. They were like, oh, it's because lion is a power symbol and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but lion is not native to the country of Germany. You know, it makes no sense. So there must be something else behind it. And I feel there's a huge connection to the Lionsgate portal with it too. So in the Matrix movie, they had two lions on a red chair. That was around minute 98. The door that leads to Source, that popped up somehow. A bugs or virus in the system was attacking them. That was at the very end of this movie. And then you meet the architect who created the Matrix. And the Matrix is much older than you know. They're already on the 6th version. So I kind of interpreted the 6th version. The architect was saying they're on the 6th version, that we had 6 resets. And then something about 16 females and getting 7 males in return. That was at the very end of the movie. Okay, so then we're going to go to the Matrix Revolutions. And I think this is the right order of the movies. I'm not 100% sure, you guys, but you know, if I'm mistaken, that's okay. I think you're still getting something out of this. The Matrix Revolutions was in the same year, just later. It's basically the second part to what we just discussed. People being programmed. So robotoid clones is kind of what I saw in that sentence. Every program needs a purpose. So infusing purposes into these soulless beings, these clone bodies, you can't experience love. So when you're a program, you can't experience love, but you can imagine it like humans. And that makes sense because, you know, when we watch all these love movies, there's a certain depth that's missing. Sorry, getting it all mixed up. There's a certain depth that's missing in a lot of these Hollywood type of movies because the love on screen is not real love. It's all acting. And I kind of feel when I look at a lot of these dysfunctional marriages and partnerships and relationships, I'm sure there are some people who are happy together too, of course. But when you look at a majority of people who are just staying together to stay together because society tells them, because they don't have the guts to leave that person, because of the financial situation, it makes sense. It's because we're being lied to left and right. And we're, you know, like everyone tells us, no, you have to stay with that person. And you start imagining that love. It's basically like a program, like an imprint on you, right? Now, I'm sure some people are together because they really love each other. But I'm just saying, I think for a majority of soulless people, at least, or people maybe, you know, you can't experience love, but you can imagine it, something like that. And humans will always be able to experience love, is what is said in the movie. There was a deranged man wearing a lot of different watches. That was the train man. So Neo was kind of stuck in this train station, waiting on a train that was never coming or always bringing him back to the same station. It's kind of like a continuous loop. He was kind of stuck in this loop. And that's a part that also reminded me of the Inception movie, because if you're stuck in a dream reality, you don't know how to get out because you don't have a totem or you're not dying in that reality. You're kind of stuck there. And it's kind of maybe we're stuck in this continuous loop right now. And through the reincarnation trap, we keep getting stuck over and over again. So this deranged man who kind of looked, it's very, you know, a lot of these symbology, you do see it here in New York, you know, the homeless people that have schizophrenia, all of those things. He was wearing a lot of different watches, kind of like they're messing with our time. And time is an illusion anyhow, is what it reminded me of. And then karma is a word like love. I'm not sure if the Oracle said that or someone else. No one can see beyond a choice. They don't understand. I really resonated with that sentence because you try to explain to people. We're really seeing that with the New Age reviews. We're also seeing that with explaining certain concepts. Like when I want to explain to, let's just say, relatives or whatever, how, you know, the British Queen is really not as great as they think it is, or, you know, just people who really aren't, I mean, just there yet, let's put it that way, which I do think some people could be there, but it's just, they're programmed, right? So you can't see beyond a choice when you don't understand it. You can't see beyond a reality when you don't understand it. If someone had told me 50, 20 years ago that I would be dissecting through this Matrix movie and explaining all these sentences to you, I probably would have never understood that. You know, for me, it would have just been a movie as a teenager or whatever. But it's just certain things like that, right? Certain choices we make. And it kind of implies we made choices, but I don't really agree with that. But it's part of what they were saying in the movie. And then we have the power of the mind extends beyond this world and point and reaches all the way back to where it came from. And I put in question marks, meaning the source. It came from the source. So that's why the power of our mind is so valuable, because it comes straight from source, and we are more powerful than they want us to believe. Everything that has a beginning has an end. And then at the very end of it, so the Oracle was overtaken by Agent Smith and kind of turned into this black goo, and then another agent too, because basically he would turn people into black goo by getting to their heart. And then that person would have black goo over them and would turn into a replica of Agent Smith. So before that, the Oracle, which the Oracle is this African American woman or Jamaican woman or whatever, for people who don't remember. Before that, the Oracle would always offer someone to eat red candy. The color red, and candy too, you know, candy includes sugar. So right now, a lot of people are saying sugar is toxic and get rid of it in your diet and everything. I do agree with that to a certain extent. You know, of course, we know it's toxic. It can cause certain teeth decay and tooth decay and all of that too. But sugar reminds us maybe that we're in this reality. It kind of grounds us. I feel it always kind of grounds me when I eat sugar. And I am a bit addicted to sugar. I'm going to admit that. I've always been. And I wondered about that because some people, when I was still working in offices and everything, some people were even like, oh, it's true, you have a sweet tooth and yada, yada. And I'm like, but is it really that much more than other people? I didn't really see it that way. But maybe it's because people who, you know, have more of this intuitive insight than people who are still in the program, maybe we just know that sugar is kind of a way out too, or it grounds us at least, or there's something behind it that makes it feel real. And the color red, for me, you know, like the red dress lady in one of those movies too, it also means something. So I think that's all I wanted to share in regards to these movies. Got a little bit longer again. I hope you got something out of it. If so, definitely comment below if there's anything you want to add. I know there was another Matrix movie. I already did a review on that back in January. I kind of wish I had seen the other 2 or 3 movies beforehand again, because it makes more sense when you've seen them, but it is what it is. And this is so wonky. I'm looking at my screen and it almost feels like I was in a different dimension or reality while I was doing the other thing. So yeah, very strange. When you review these movies, you kind of warped into a different mindset too. So let me know what you think, if you have any more comments or anything else that popped up when you watched these movies, because I'm sure some people did, or if there's another movie or series that you want to recommend. I do think it could be important to dissect through these things because they're giving us disclosure. And by giving energetic disclosure to these things too, it keeps us trapped somehow, and it kind of perpetuates the plans that they have for us too. And I hope this helps. Talk to you very soon. Bye, guys. I actually want to talk about the Amazon symbol too, and how there's like a little arrow. And it almost reminded me, what is that arrow for? Is it like keeping us looped somehow too? What are we giving disclosure to with the Amazon symbol? All right, have a wonderful one. Take care.